Hi, I'm Bradley Barth, Senior Reporter with SC Media, here at the RSA Conference in San Francisco, and with me today is Dr. Richard Ford. He is Chief Scientist at Forcepoint. Richard, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me here. It's always a pleasure.
Richard, I know Forcepoint is a cybersecurity company with a human-centric perspective, and you actually have a talk that kind of follows that philosophy today. You're going to be talking about companies protecting their own intellectual property, but generally from themselves, so a little bit of an insider threat perspective. Explain what that means. Talk a little bit about what your talk's going to be.
Right, so it's really interesting, right? So IP protection is huge, obviously, but what's interesting is the most likely person to steal IP is the person that uses it every day. So for example, if I was going to steal an invention, it's likely my own invention, right? It's not going to be somebody random in the company stealing my invention. The most likely thief is me. So the problem with doing that is if you use analytics, it's easy to spot, say, when you're accessing my data, but it's really hard to notice that when I access my data, my intent isn't to use it, it's to steal it. And so customers and companies have a real challenge on how do you protect IP from the most likely thief, but also the person that touches it every day. And analytics around events is not good enough. What you have to do is change your unit of analysis and really understand the human. So in the security world, I'd say we're the evil kings of understanding what is happening. In the new world, we have to get really good at understanding why. So why did you take that file? Not, did you take that file?
Now, Forcepoint has a pretty exciting announcement here in conjunction with RSA. You are opening up a lab that you are calling really the first to be behavior intelligence centric. So it's going to look at almost the psychology of threats and behavior how that affects data management at a company.
That's exactly right. So if you think about it, IOCs are important, but they're necessary, but not sufficient, right? Because again, it's about telling you the what, not the why. By understanding humans, we can actually start to understand why somebody's copying that data, what makes you likely to steal, because we like to think how different we are as people, but in fact, we're very predictable. And what's really great for me, I've been working in cyber for almost 3 decades now, so I'm getting to hang out with psychologists and social scientists and people that have a completely different skill set to me. But it brings home the fact that data doesn't get up and run out the door on its own. It's about how the human interacts with the data. And so by focusing too much on the tech, we miss so many opportunities for protection. And given the state of the industry, anything we can do to improve how we protect data is really, really important. So seeing the whole picture, not the sort of reductionist event-based picture, is so important. So yeah, I love this announcement. It's one that I'm genuinely excited about because it's just different, and I think it's the right approach to actually getting out of security hell.
You have some very interesting takes on a variety of subjects. We were talking a little bit before. And speaking of psychology, there's a little bit of a psychology behind why the security industry and security professionals in general aren't really necessarily tackling supply chain security as much as they should, even though there are a lot of supply chain threats out there, as exemplified by fears over mobile phones, hardware from China, from Huawei and ZTE, and even past incidents like the ransomware attack, the NotPetya ransomware attack, where companies were infected through a server that delivered an update of software that had been compromised. So despite some of these fears and concerns and incidents, it's still not necessarily being tackled the way it should. Why is that?
Well, for a start, it's a very hard problem, right? So I'm not faulting my sort of CISO brothers and sisters out there in the industry. They do a great job and they're trying their best. The problem is it's extremely difficult for a single company to fix, right? Securing your supply chain is hard. You can look at how your risks are coming in and how it all works, but really to solve that, you have to get to a nation state level because a lot of the supply chain insecurity is sort of more nation state based. And so if you think of the CISO, they're almost like a triage doctor in the emergency room. So they're fixing the problems they can do something about and, you know, hoping that we can, at the nation state level, come up with what norms about what conflict looks like in cyberspace, what's acceptable behavior and what isn't. So I think they're not handling it, but I also think it's a really hard problem for them to handle.
And another interesting thing that we were discussing a little bit before is that maybe things are shifting in terms of who CISOs in various organizations should be reporting to ultimately. There might be a shift in that regard. I wanted to share a little bit about maybe who they should be reporting to now.
Yeah, so I've always found it interesting when the CISO reports to the CIO. I mean, I understand it. They're both technologists. They're both sort of partners, but also there's a bit of fox and hen house going on, especially in the age of digital transformation with CIOs under tremendous pressure to digitize the business and allow free access to information from anywhere, anytime, anybody, but only the right set of anybody. So I think in the long term, we're going to see forward-looking companies adopting the CISO and more of the chief risk officer sort of reporting chain, because I think now cyber really is business risk, and I think that we have to look at technology risk as part of the business risk, because technology is folded into the business, whatever it is, rather than being technology in and of itself. And because we see this blurring between human-centric, data-centric, and then traditional IOC, I think it makes a lot of sense to sort of move that to a sort of chief risk officer reporting structure. And we've already seen some pretty big companies start to go in that direction. So I think, to me, that's how I think this will evolve over the next few years.
All right, great. Well, that's Dr. Richard Ford, Chief Scientist at Forcepoint. And I'm Brad Barth, Senior Reporter at SC Media here at RSA 2019 in San Francisco. Until next time, have a safe day online.